And with me in the DW interview is the President of Montenegro, Jakov Milatovic. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the world is unhinged, as many foreign ministers have put it, including the German one. What can a rather small country, but in a strategic region like Montenegro, contribute to making it a bit more stable again?
So I've been elected the president of Montenegro in May this year, and since the very first day I was very clear about the foreign policy goals of Montenegro. Number one is credibility of our NATO membership. Montenegro has been a NATO member since 2017, and that's a particularly important also now given the world geopolitics. Number two is the EU accession. And I'm going to come back more directly to your question. And number three is good neighborly relations. And all those three priorities, well, really nicely fit in terms of answering your question. I think that a small country, a small Balkan country, a small Mediterranean country like Montenegro, with the new political generation. Younger people who came back from abroad, now taking high-level positions in Montenegro, is ready to play an even more active role in terms of the priorities that I just mentioned. I think that the very important one would probably be the accession of Montenegro into the EU, because the EU now, especially after the Russian aggression in Ukraine, needs this successful story that would really show to the rest of the candidate countries that the accession is alive. And I think that story can be indeed Montenegro. So whenever I speak about this, I always say that the accession of Montenegro is a much bigger story than Montenegro itself, because we can in that regard be this positive example, the light at the end of the tunnel, and really show to the rest of the region that reforms pay off. And I think in this geopolitics that would also be very meaningful, right? Because Europe would become stronger, and also the reform pace in a number of other candidate countries would perhaps be speedier following the accession of Montenegro into the EU.
Now you're clearly making the case for Montenegro moving ahead much faster, but you mentioned NATO, and as a NATO partner, of course, you are a key partner in the region. You also just had elections, and the kingmaker was from a pro-Russian party who actually became Speaker of Parliament, Mr. Mandic. Now, he is known to be anti-EU, pro-Russian. He meets with Serbia's Prime Minister on a regular basis, and he has access to classified NATO documents. So does that not leave you as an open door potentially to Russia? And how do you want to convince your NATO partners that you are a reliable partner with that kind of political setup?
Well, absolutely not. I think that what we have been seeing in Montenegro over the last 3 years, ever since the political change happened in the country in 2020, when I joined the government of Montenegro as an economy minister, and when the current prime minister joined the government as a finance minister. What we have been seeing over the last 3 years is that indeed there is an increase of the public support for the NATO membership, because people like myself, like the current Prime Minister, have been those who were promoting strongly Montenegro and its NATO membership. And I think that for the first time that story was detached from the former regime. And this is how we ended up actually with much higher public support for the Montenegro's active role within the NATO. And also adding to that, I think that when I say a credible NATO member, I mean about institutions and the rule of law. And what we have been doing over the last 3 years, we have been cleaning up a judiciary that was, not because I say so, but because the reports from the European Commission, from the State Department, from some of our strategic partners were saying that our judiciary was politically captured.
Well, you are, it's true, you are the country that is furthest along in the process towards EU accession. At the same time, you now have a political setup, including someone from a party that is pro-Russian. So how are you reassuring your NATO members that someone with access to NATO documents is not going to open a door to Russia into Montenegrin politics? Right.
Well, I mean, let me be clear here. I don't really want to be an advocate of the Speaker of the Parliament, but he has signed a coalition agreement where his party is also committed to EU and Euro-Atlantic future of Montenegro. And what's even more important is that the support that his party will be providing in the Parliament in order to nominate the officials within our judiciary that would be there to even more strongly fight organized crime and corruption. And I think that's the key for institutional development of Montenegro, for Montenegro to become an even more credible member of the NATO. And that was one of the reasons why the current government was constructed with the current parliamentary majority. I'm very much confident that the current Prime Minister fully shares my views on the EU and Euro-Atlantic track of Montenegro, and I'm also very much confident that the Speaker of the Parliament will be there to support the vision of two of us, as long as the things move along what has been signed as the coalition agreement. As long as the country is moving forward, especially in terms of the fight against organized crime and corruption, as long as the country is economically converging, I think that there's definitely nothing to fear about.
What's the biggest risk to stability in the Western Balkans at the moment? Because that's something the European Union is very much concerned about, to have yet another source of instability on top of the Ukraine war and also what's happening in the Middle East, which has completely shaken up international diplomacy.
Right. Well, first of all, I think that what's going on in Ukraine is tragic, and from the very day one, Montenegro has strongly supported Ukraine in its fight against the Russian aggression on the sovereign country. We have provided our support both bilaterally as well as part of the multilateral support, and we have also joined the G7 declaration on Ukraine. Thus, it's sort of a really, even from that regard, showing the commitment towards the Ukrainian fight for freedom. When it comes to the Western Balkans, Churchill once said that the Western Balkans has been the region in Europe that was always producing more history than we can actually absorb, and I sort of agree with him. This is why I think that now with the peaceful transition of power in Montenegro, that happened in 2020, that happened also following the presidential elections, when I defeated my predecessor, but the defeat and the victory was done in a very smooth way. I was very happy to witness the arrival of all the leaders from the Balkan countries in Montenegro for the inauguration, and I think that even that image that we have sent out that day of my inauguration was symbolically a very strong one, because Montenegro has shown to be this place of tolerance, peace and prosperity, sort of a role model for the rest of the Balkans. You know that there are tensions in the region, but Montenegro is very much strongly supporting the dialogue between Serbia and Kosovo under the umbrella of the EU. We are also very much hopeful that North Macedonia will do certain changes of its constitution so that it can move along its EU path. We are also very much hoping that there is sort of a more togetherness within the Bosnia and Herzegovina. We are committed towards supporting Bosnia and Herzegovina as a united country, and we are doing what we can to be really this this good neighbor in the region, because I think that's ultimately very important.
Now, the basis of these conflicts that you've just cited are older than you are. Is this, and also the president, you are the president, the prime minister is also under 40. So do you have a different generational look at these conflicts?
I think that's the good thing about Montenegro now, because both myself and the prime minister, came back to Montenegro from years of working and studying abroad, and really brought the new vision to Montenegro. And as you rightly said, we are younger than some of the conflicts that we have mentioned. And I think this is why we are very much committed to developing Montenegro from the institutional point of view. I think this is what we also need more in the rest of the region. I'm a huge supporter of the institutional development, because ultimately a strong country, a strong modern country, depends on the strong institutions. But the strong institutions are being built by the people who care about the public interest, who have zero tolerance on corruption, and who are there to support their communities to flourish.
What do you make of the open Balkan grouping, which is, some say, is almost getting in the way of the Berlin process potentially? Do you see your country joining it, or how do you view it?
I think that one of the best things that happened, in terms of regional economic cooperation over the last, few years was the Berlin process, which was kicked off by the Chancellor Merkel here in Berlin in 2014, and I think that the region really tremendously got a positive effects of that process. I think that that's the way to go, and Montenegro is very much committed to the Berlin process. But I think that all other things that can also sort of bring the positive image to the region and sort of promote regional economic cooperation are good things. Ultimately, I think that very often we all need to go from the region to realize that the EU has also been an idea that was created as a story of regional economic integration. Only a few years after the atrocities of the World War II. And we are now decades from the conflicts in former Yugoslavia. Is it really that difficult that we cooperate between each other? I don't think so. And I'm, in that regard, a huge promoter of the regional economic integration. It is sort of an irony that we were the only part of Europe, let's say, 50, 60 years ago, without borders. Now we are the only part of Europe with borders. And those borders, mean cost, mean time which is being spent. And I think that we need to really promote regional cooperation and promote the region as a part of the EU, because ultimately what I think is the only, prerequisite for the stability and prosperity of the region is that the region becomes the member of the EU.
So what signal do you believe is needed out of Brussels from EU members to actually rein in the tendencies that there could be new conflicts? Because what you are mapping out is an ideal world where everybody would get along, but the matter of fact is that Serbia and Kosovo are very much on the brink of having more conflict, and at the same in Bosnia and Herzegovina there's a serious risk that could get out of hand again. I
think that if there is even one positive thing following the Russian aggression on Ukraine, was a wake-up call in Brussels, as well as in other European capitals, including in Berlin, that the enlargement is not only about accession, it's about security of Europe. And what we have been seeing over the last 1 year, decisive steps. Look at Ukraine, got the candidacy status. Republic of Moldova, the same. Bosnia and Herzegovina got the candidacy status. Kosovo got its visa liberalization. etc., etc. And I think that Europe understood that the enlargement is not only about technicalities of the process, but it's also about geopolitics. And I'm very happy that there was a huge shift in Brussels in that regard. And I think that shift is now helping the region also speed up certain things internally and externally. And Montenegro can really be this country, because we are small, because we are fully aligned with the foreign security policy of the EU, because we are a member of NATO, because we now have, perhaps some politicians who are truly Euro-Atlantic, not, just for the sake of saying it, but truly Euro-Atlantic. And I'm very much confident that with Montenegro being this positive story, we can really also send the huge spillover effects to the rest of the region that can perhaps be massive for even more speedier reforms in those countries.
But are you suggesting that the EU should in turn take a step that it's unwilling to do? It's basically sending the signal that you can't join on geopolitical grounds alone, and it is unwilling to internalize conflicts like Serbia and Kosovo, like what's happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So what would you expect the EU to do?
I would expect the EU to be more committed, practically committed, because what's going on now in the region, sort of the public has lost the trust that the EU membership is possible. When it was the last time that some country joined? It was in 2013 when Croatia joined. It has been 10 years. Certain countries change their names. Look at North Macedonia. And when you even think about the positive shifts in the region over the last 10, they are obvious. And what I am asking the EU to do is to commit, but to practically commit about the membership. And I think that's also what this is why I have said that I'm happy to see that there is a change of attitude in Europe in that regard as well happening. The process of enlargement, needs to be technical. Sure, every country needs to do their own homework. Absolutely, yes. But geopolitical and political as well. And those two things need to go hand in hand. And I think, this is why I'm always saying that the accession of Montenegro would be a story bigger than Montenegro, because then the region would see that it is alive, that the process is alive, that there is, this small country, Montenegro, joining the EU. And I think, that would be tremendously important for the rest of the region, for Eastern Europe, as a signal, because now, the practical signal has been missing a bit.
And at the same time, there's potential for conflict everywhere. Something that sounds as straightforward as a census suddenly became controversial in your own country. How is that progressing?
I think that, there are still politicians in Montenegro who are constantly using every possible opportunity to relaunch the topics of the past. And the census, whenever I was asked about the census, I always answer in the same way. The census is a statistical question that we need to have in order to have a better decision making going forward, right? I'm confident that we are going to have a census, and that that it would go okay, that we are going to get the results. Not only about the identity questions that now everybody is sort of talking about, but about so many other questions that are much more important than the one that everybody is focusing on. How many people live in Montenegro? What's the age structure of those people? What's the ownership of those people, etc., etc. And those are the important results that we need. So whenever I'm asked about the position on the census, I always answer, look, it's a statistical question. The best thing would be not to mention it. And I think that more we mention it, more political it becomes.
Or became an ethnically charged issue.
Unfortunately,
Yes.
Unfortunately. And this is why I was also, I never really raised the question, on my own. I always just, answer the questions if I'm asked about it. But let's leave it really to the statisticians. Because, what I'm currently hearing is from the politicians who are asking, the census to be depoliticized, they're at the same time suggesting that the political actors control the process. It's a bit absurd, right? And this is why I think that the Statistical Office of Montenegro, that has been sort of praised by the Eurostat about its capacity and ability to implement the census. Let's leave it to them. And I think, that's the best thing that we can do about the census.
And just finally, let me just ask you, what's your biggest hope and your biggest concern for Europe right now?
My biggest hope is that by the end of this year, we are going to, find a political consensus in the parliament to appoint new people within the judiciary, the people with integrity who would really, keep up the fight against corruption and organized crime. I cannot do it. I have done my fight when I politically defeated people who were sort of capturing our judiciary. Now it's up to the others, to help me, bring the hope to the people of Montenegro about the justice and about economic convergence, because ultimately there are only two things that people really want. They want justice and they want economic opportunities. That's it. It's as easy as that. And my biggest concern is that perhaps, there are still, I call them political dinosaurs in Montenegro who just don't want that, who want, to get back to the old topics of identity, of the past, and who are stopping the better future for Montenegro. But, I'm also very much confident that there is now the president, there is now the prime minister, who are future-oriented and who are there not to allow that we go back to the past, but that we, really look, into the better future.
President Milatovic, thank you very much for talking to Deutsche Welle.
Thank you very much.